What's up, everybody? Jake with Relentless Fly Fishing and TCO Fly Shop. Today, I'm going to talk to you about a pretty cool cicada pattern that I've been messing around with called the frog cutter cicada. It got its name because I used the STP frog cutter for the body. This is the size medium. It also comes in a size small. Both of those work great for the periodical or the broodx cicada. I think the medium works great for an annual cicada. So we've got the annual cicada, more of a white belly, olive thread. And then we have the periodical or the 17-year broodx cicada in a black belly with orange thread. One other thing that I do a lot of times with these cicadas, just to show you, is I typically will use two different color threads. The orange, the bright orange, I'm going to use when I'm fishing in water that's not super clear. It might be a little dirty, a little bit faster. They need something to really catch their attention. But if you've got low clear water, those fish have been pretty pressured. That kind of more amber color is a more natural color. If you flip one of these cicadas over, you'll notice that there's not so much of a bright orange as it is more of an amber or kind of that burnt orange color. So if I've got picky fish, I'm going to go with this. If I got fish that don't care, I'm going to go with this. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. Get some tied up and head out to central Pennsylvania. That's where all the action's happening. All right, let's start the frog cutter cicada. So for this one, I'm going to use the fluorescent orange, which, like I mentioned before, you can use orange or amber. So we're going to start with a thread base. It goes back to a roughly halfway between the hook point and the what's that thing called? The barb. That's right, the barb. Okay, we're going to go all the way back. Now we wanted to create a nice thread base because this is going to help secure this super glue of these two bodies down on here. So I've already super glued orange and gray. So the gray is going to be on top once we fold it back. So we're going to kind of reverse tie this. So we're going to end up tying this with the gray down to start. Now we want to get a nice about 1/8 inch of foam to kind of help really purchase give you good purchase on there. So fold that back just to make sure you're in the right spot. You don't want to have too much gap between the hook eye and your foam. When I flip this, we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. So we're going to try to make sure. So we want to give it a little bit of glue. I'm not throwing a whole lot of thread in here because I don't want to over bulk this. But we want to just kind of make sure that we're all pretty close and lined up with our top and our bottom. Okay, now I'm going to just kind of mash this extra foam down. Check that black, make sure. I always seem to go a little short on the black, which I just did again. So I want to just make sure we've got that all the way front. Now, go ahead and whip finish this. So we're going to be done with that. All you got to do is once because there's plenty of glue there. Now, one thing I have done, you can see I've put a perfect slit right down the middle, and that's going to help go around that hook a little bit. So we'll just kind of lay that just on that hook, just like that. So I'm going to run some super glue on the thread, and then I'm going to run super glue on both these body pieces. Now the one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to put super glue on the tail piece yet because I want to make sure that is pretty level. So we're just going to squeeze that with our fingers. Should only take about 10 seconds or so to get that really good if you stop moving. So just flatten that up. Just like that. Now that we've got that secured in there the way we need it, we're going to throw a little glue on the orange and kind of push this black down and together. And that's going to kind of push that in there. Try not to glue yourself to the foam, and that's going to give you a nice little kind of deal there. Now, if it's not perfect, that's totally fine because we're gonna do some other stuff. One thing I just noticed was that I got a little bit of foam over the eye. So if you have a razor blade, that'll get that out of there. So now we've got a clear eyeball there again. All right. I screw this up all the time, so I'm going to start off by saying that because I can never remember, because I want to make sure that it goes this way. But I'm going to take this out, and we're going to kind of create a extended body segmentation on here a little bit. So if it's not in focus, it might come back, but we're going to do one right in the back. I'm going to give myself some loose thread here, so I don't want to have a lot. So we're just going to do one wrap, two wrap, kind of pull that tight. Now we're going to do the same thing, but before I do that, you can't see any of this because I pulled it out. We're going to cut that excess off. We're going to do one more, kind of coming up over the side, just behind there, and that's going to give us our two little segmentations in the back. Now, if I did this right, which I didn't, I would be going the right direction. So I'm not going the right direction. So I'm going to have to redo all of that, which is totally fine. So what I realized is that if I go away from me, then it doesn't work. So I've got to come towards me. 1, 2, again, loosening a little bit of that thread. 1, 2, it'll come up. And it looks like we're doing it all backwards because we technically are. Or the fly is facing the wrong direction, so we're going to get two segmentations here. Now you don't have to do this if you don't want to. I just think it looks really nice. And then we'll throw that back in the vise. We will cut that excess off, just like that. Now we're good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come underneath. We're going to go over the top. We're going to fold this so we can see it, and our next tie-in should be right in front of that hook. Okay, so now I've got 3. So we're going to come up, bringing our thread over. We're going to end up doing five of these. So this is 4. That's going to give us our nice little taper. Got that nice segmentation. And then we're going to do one more, making it a little wider each time. Okay? Now on this one, we're going to tie in our back legs. So we're just going to take a piece of Sexy Floss by Montana Fly Company. This is barred amber. We're going to make that leg about the length of the fly itself. So I'm going to end up trimming off just a little bit of this. And when I trim this, I'm going to leave a little tag, and I'll show you why in a second. And this is kind of important. It helps add to the durability of this fly. So same thing on this side. We're going to tie that in right in the middle of the orange, and that's going to give you your, kind of good, stable, level floating bug. Okay, we're going to cut off a little bit of that. Now with that, we're going to fold that little tag back, and we're just going to dab a tiny bit of super glue right there. This is going to make sure that those legs don't get affected by the glue, because sometimes glue can make rubber legs do funny things. But it's also going to secure those legs in there really well. So that's going to give us our nice level body. Now we're going to split the gap between the front of the fly and where we just tied that in. So we want to give ourselves a pretty big segmentation at this point. I'm just going to do 2 wraps there because we're going to end up tying a bunch of material in right here, and I don't want to overcrowd or over thread this. So you can see the more you tie stuff in, the thicker that gets. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do an underwing. You can get away with just straight pearl if you wanted on this, but I'm going to kind of give ourselves a little bit of a mottled look. I'm going to take 2 strands of black Crystal Flash. I'm going to take 2 strands of orange Crystal Flash, because the wing of a cicada, or at least the 17-year or the periodic cicada, it actually has a little bit of yellow and orange and black in it. So we're going to 2 of those, and then we're going to take 2 pearl ones. Okay, and we're going to lay them all flat on the table, which you can't see, but that's okay. Or if you can, it's out of focus. So we're going to take that, we got all those together, we're going to fold them in half. So now we end up with 8 strands on each side. Cut it. Okay? Now we're going to take this, and I've just lost one of the black ones. Got it back. Tie this in at an angle, so it's going to come off the top like this. One wrap, two wraps. Then we'll take the extra, the other side, and we're going to create a loop out the front, and we're going to make one loose wrap, and that'll give you the ability to kind of adjust that angle of that. So one loose wrap, pull that tight, two wraps are good. Now what I'll do is I'll pull all this flash over. We're going to go just past the body. That's going to give us our two separate wings. Cut off all that excess, just like that. Okay. Now I've got some Poly Pro floating yarn that I've already cut off the card, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my dubbing brush and I'm just going to pull all this out. And if you're you might lose some, that's totally fine, but we want to make sure it's completely separated. Then we're going to flatten it out a little bit because we don't need a lot of this. This just adds flotation. It also adds just a little bit of extra profile to this. So we'll get it nice and flat, level, lay that right on the top, one wrap, then you can spread it out to however you want it. So that's going to give you a nice overwing there. One more securing wrap, pull it tight, and then cut off this excess. So the reason I'm not using a lot of thread here is because we are going to end up throwing a little bit of super glue in there, so that should help kind of really secure that in there. Alright, now we're going to make some wings. We're going to take some web wing. This stuff is pretty delicate, so it will get chewed up by fish, but it makes a great wing, so it's that kind of mottled-ish gray color. You can also use the new Chocolates 3D bug wings, or you can use Montana Fly Company's Flex Wing. The Flex Wing is really nice. It's a little bit more opaque, so not quite as translucent. So what I'm going to do to make a relatively easy wing here is I'm just going to take the wing and I'm going to cut it. We're going to leave one side flat, and we're going to just cut it at an angle down, just like that. So now I've got a little bit of an angle. Now I'm going to do another angle, making this wing smaller as we go. So now we have a nice little wing profile here. Sharp edges. So what you can do is you can trim that point and trim that point, and now you have a relatively rounded wing. So the straight piece is going to go in the middle, and the tapered section will go on the outside. So we'll tie this in on the top. See, it gives yourself a nice little profile there. I want my wings to be out the side a little bit, because when those cicadas hit the water, their wings are almost never straight on top of them. They're typically struggling, so having those wings laid out on the side is kind of important, I think, to the profile of these bugs. So we're going to do the same thing on that other side. We're going to make a second wing out of web wing. Just going to cut that on a nice angle. Then we're going to, whoops, dropped it. Then we're going to go back and do our second angle, back towards the end. Cut the steep angles out of there, just like that. Now this one looks a little bit longer, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of measure that roughly the same length, and then I'm going to trim off some of that excess right there. So we'll tie that in here. And that's going to give you your two wings on the top. So, second to last step on this particular tie-in is we're going to tie in some more legs. So I've taken another Sexy Floss in the amber, and I've cut one strand off and I've cut it in half. So now we've got two. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tie this in again, same spot. Try to get that back leg to be roughly the same length as the second back leg. Front's going to be a little shorter, just like that. Now we'll do the same thing on this side. So we'll get a rough length, pull that tight, and that'll give us our nice little wing, or excuse me, our nice little legs. Okay, so there's our legs. Now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of orange foam that's about a 1/4 inch wide, 1/2 inch long. And I'm going to take some super glue and I'm going to dabble that right on the top there. So that's going to help secure all of those materials in that we just tied in. And I'm going to take this and I'm just going to put that right on the top. Pull that tight. Try to keep it in the center if you can. It's going to flare up a little bit. That's going to be super, super easy to see for the angler. I also like to make sure you can't see it from the bottom. So you can't see it. Too much orange might be a problem. Now, because we just did all that super gluing, we don't need a lot of whip finishes. So I'm only going to put one whip finish in there. And we're going to cut that off. We're going to flip this over. Just like that. And I'm just going to dab a little glue, brush a little glue on each one of those tie-ins there. And that's going to make that super durable. So that's not going anywhere. Now, the one thing that we're going to make this look super natural, which I just forgot to grab, is we're going to use, so there's different things you can use for these eyes. If you go to Michael's, you can get little red pins, and you can just cut the pins short and stick those in there and you're good. I just ran out of those because I've been tying cicadas like crazy. So our other option is shrimp eyes. So these are red EP shrimp eyes. The other option, which I've done on a couple other ones, are the easy shrimp eyes that are kind of a new thing. I tie a lot of saltwater flies with them. These are translucent red, so on this one you've got the translucent red eyeballs on there. But because these are on monofilament, it's really hard to get them in the foam. So we take a bodkin, and in the orange, right about the front of the fly, we're going to stick a hole in there, just like that. Okay? Now we're going to cut at an angle, which doesn't really matter, but I do it just because it makes me feel better. We're going to cut most of that mono off, and we're just going to stick it in the hole, just like that. That's going to give you your little eyeball. Now obviously that's going to fall right out, so we're going to use a tiny bit of super glue here. I'm going to flip this over. I like to do it from the bottom. Get that in there, and then you can just push that into the fly, hold it for about 5 to 8 seconds, and there you go. There's your little eyeball. And those things don't come out, I can tell you that. So we'll do the same thing on this side, into the orange. Just like that. Cutting that at an angle. Sticking it in there. Now obviously I know exactly where I'm going, so I'm just going to throw that glue on there, and then I'm going to smash this in. I want it to kind of go into the foam a little bit, so we're going to push on that just a bit. And it won't come out. So there's your little red eyeballs, and there's cicada. So like I said before, you can use the small if you want. I only have the medium. I think the small would be really good. I do also, now that I've kind of figured this out, I'm going to be tying it in kind of your summertime annual cicada color. This is just going to be white, olive, and chartreuse, and I'm going to use olive thread for that. I'm going to use black eyes or olive eyes or green eyes, not red. But you can also, the other option is if you don't have a cutter, like I also mentioned, you can kind of cut teardrops, just like that. So I've foamed, now when you free cut, they're never going to be perfect, but it doesn't really matter. This one is the free cut one, so you can kind of see the bottom. It's a little bit smaller than the other one, but you know, once you get those kind of thread segmentations on there, it doesn't make that much difference. But there are different sizes of these cicadas. Pardon me, I just kicked the tripod. There are different sizes of these cicadas, so having multiple sizes, having some that have the amber on the bottom. So this one's one, this is one of the bigger ones with amber. So you can see it's a little bit less intrusive there versus the orange. Having a couple of those are great. You can kind of mess around with these, but I haven't had any fish really turn these down. at this point. I'm sure later in the season they will. But anyway, that is the frog cutter cicada.